Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the farm. Just when you thought all the fun traveling was over, we get to hop in the grain cart today and make that same hour-and-a-half to 2-hour journey. That's one of the joys of farming about 40 miles away from home. It is about 4 miles an hour faster than the combine, so I can't complain about that. Those wet beans we were cutting yesterday afternoon are going to a bin site just to the south of our main farm in this nice small Superior Binco bin. Complemented nicely by an aluminum bin, which is essentially worthless to us, but also very valuable at the same time because it's entirely made out of aluminum. The only real reason I'm here is to check and make sure the bin fan's still running, which I don't even need to walk back there to know that it's going, because you can hear it. Like I said, it is very clearly running. I just went back there for demonstration purposes, and it looks like we don't have the animal guard on there. Have you ever seen a raccoon or a possum or something go through a fan like that? Whew, blends them right up. Although it's going to take almost 2 hours to get to this farm, there's no reason to be in too much of a hurry because the beans probably aren't going to cut for 3 or even 4 hours. There's the key. Here comes half the crew from harvesting over east. Speaking of fuel, here comes the heaviest drinker on the farm. Dinner and a Tums to go with it. Actually, this is more like an air freshener to clean up the fragrances from eating dinner. The case of the disappearing hydraulic oil. When you're gonna be this far away from home, always bring extra hydraulic oil. The tractor windows are spotless, courtesy of John Deere Classic Glass Cleaner, the best in the business. Style and comfort, courtesy of the aTrippyFarmer merchandise on farmfocus.com. Go check it out. Seatbelt's gonna be on for added safety. We're headed west, everyone. I also emptied my bladder because I've learned that lesson the hard way before. Let's hit the road. Oh, we made it, barely. With about 2 miles left to go in the journey, I decided to take a detour to get rid of all the traffic behind me, and I'm never going down those roads again because I about got beat to death doing so. This tractor is much more enjoyable to road than the combine is. It isn't nearly as squirrely or as rough. The definition of hanging by a thread. The beans are appearing to be high 15s on the monitor, so we're gonna take a manual sample to the elevator and scout it out. Beans tested 16.1 about an hour ago at the elevator. So we're gonna cut a little bit more and see what they've done in the last 60 minutes. Probably not much. It's been a frustrating afternoon so far. The ground's pretty dry here, actually much more so than where we were yesterday. However, these beans do not want to dry out. They're holding in that upper 14 to lower 15 range. You know, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do here. The sun is out, the wind is blowing, and it's low 70s. You'd think they'd be dry by now. They're just being little rascals though and holding around that moisture. We may have to shut down for an hour and wait and see what they do. I would really think that a dust like that would indicate these beans are dry. We sent Jeff to the elevator with a load. I guess we'll know based on a scale ticket what kind of moisture we're dealing with. I've mentioned before the finicky nature of soybeans. At the elevator, the bushels get shrunk or deducted 1.5% per 0.5% over 13. So if these beans are 15%, we'd be losing 6% of our gross weight. Now, some degree of that is natural by that moisture leaving. However, I believe that they charge an excessive amount, which is why we don't want to send beans to the elevator that wet. So we're gonna get this cart full and we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it dries out. Combines are rolling here in Tower Hill, but Man, there's no way anyone else's beans are any drier than this.
How's that for good germination right there? We've already started the 2022 corn crop right here on the auger wagon. The wind has picked up quite a bit. It should dry these beans out a tiny bit faster. Leave them on a combine. Do you see it before you ran it through? Where'd you catch it? Oh. Yeah, that's the only problem with this all these power lines through the middle. That was an old railroad track like we had on Steve Dole's.
Jeff's been gone a while.
Oh, he hasn't?
I guess.
No, he's only been gone 15 minutes. There's a fleet of case combines headed north with a draper or a bean platform of some sort. I'd say they're going to cut some beans, or they've been cutting beans. Another neighbor way to the northeast, about 1.5 miles, Deere combine. He's not moving right now. Either he's broke down or his beans are too wet. You know, I've always wanted a swimming pool. Just today's adventure of what you're gonna find in a field. Still got air in it.
Periodically, I'm getting some static, maybe some miscommunications here on the radio from someone else talking, but it's none of our operation. I get a text message about 10 minutes ago from someone saying, hey, I can hear you clear as day on our radio channel right now. That person was none other than Tony Reed. For those of you who don't know, Tony Reed is Growing Corn 2020 on TikTok. Hilarious and inappropriate. On our trek over to this farm, we drove right by the north side of Tony's farm on the east side of Shelbyville. He also farms here south of Tower Hill somewhere, and I guess we're on the same channel. He's not being very talkative though. I chat with him. Not too much extra room on that hopper. Actually, none at all. Jeez. There it goes. He's literally running it off the back of the combine. That's just great. Nice. Much to my dismay, it did take an hour or two, but we finally got these samples down to the high 13s, so both combines can harvest full speed without paying too much attention to the moisture. Nothing quite as enjoyable to look at as where the power utility company came in to replace their poles. When it was wet, not to mention. Of course, they will reimburse the landowner here for their damages and their yield loss. Regardless though, it's not exactly pretty. It doesn't really seem to matter where we go, how far we get away from home. The common theme of this year is waiting on trucks. Combines are full, grain carts full. The elevator we're hauling to over in Pana is actually a rather large facility, so it's impressive that they're not keeping up. That just goes to show you the harvesting capacity of this area and the fact that the bean crop, and probably the corn crop, is doing just all right. Last through of the south piece, which is unfortunately the smaller piece, would probably be farther along now if it weren't for our trucking delays. This is not recommended, but we are going to road the drapers about 100 foot down 16. On the westbound lane, Dad, after this little red truck, it looks like you're clear. I'd both go after the red van on the right side. I miss hauling to the grain bin. Never have to deal with this kind of stuff. Making progress, one slow truckload at a time. Chris is back. It'd be a miracle if we see him within the next 60 minutes. More like 2 hours. That very well may be the last load he gets empty tonight, which is unfortunate because we've got a lot of beans to cut still. It amazes me that they're just now under 14% at 5:30 in the evening. Cutting hard. They're almost like those 3.9 Pioneers. Yep. Classic Marty move. Grain tank full beepers are overrated. When it starts raining off the hopper, you know you got too much.
Everything about this holdup is frustrating, to say the least. We have such a large amount of harvesting capacity that we can never really capture it because we're always waiting on trucks.
My Uber! The 670 is somehow holding its own against the 780. It has a 30-foot draper, and this is running a 35. I think that this could do a little bit better, but maybe that's not the case.
We're not quite sure. The yield monitor is not showing these beans to be that great, but they look phenomenal. It seems like we're getting them all. Barely any beans on the ground, yet it somehow claims that these are 55 to 60 bushel beans. I just don't believe that. I mean, look at the sheer size of those.
And once again, we've caught the trucks.
Been waiting probably 30 minutes. Dad and Katie have been doing some preventative maintenance. I've been supervising.
We're trying to decide how to end the night. 6:40, the elevator closes at 7. Just loaded Chris, but we're all here together and we're kind of clown carring home as one unit. So if we send Chris back to the elevator, he's liable not to be free until 8 o'clock. Do we just park him here loaded or park him at the elevator loaded, or not sure? Getting to the time of night where maybe throwing my aTrippyFarmer sweatshirt back on. Weather-wise, it's my favorite time of year. Horrible for keeping soybeans dry while you're cutting them.
The grain cart's stuffed full of dry beans. We're loading both trucks and sending them to the elevator to park since we're so far away from home and we don't want to pull them out in the field. It's too wet. Combines are going to pull out in the field with the grain cart and we're going to shut down for a night.
This is where they'll rest for the night.
There's the facility we've been hauling to. Also where we're storing our trucks for the night. They closed almost 30 minutes ago and the line is just now catching up.
Now it's time for the equipment operators to work their magic and do some farm stuff. Service everything, check the oil. Really shouldn't have to do much on the combines and the drapers because we worked them over yesterday while we were waiting an hour on trucks. Gonna need 2 hands for this one. I haven't looked yet, but I'd like to think that no one stole our GPS receivers while we were 40 miles away from home. Oh good, no one committed any felonies overnight. To go. It's about 9:40. The sun has been out all morning, not a cloud in the sky. A little chilly, about 50 degrees or so. And the wind has been blowing all morning, so I think these beans will probably cut earlier than they did yesterday, but probably not early enough to make us happy. Already pretty dry, actually. We really just want to get this cut and go home. As you could imagine, it's not very fun having to travel 45 minutes in a truck to get to the farm you're working on while worrying about getting rained out with your equipment this far away from home. Just part of farming though. Dad was making use of my shovel to pick up all of his cab and butt corn, or soybeans I guess. It's early, the beans actually feel dry. We may go ahead and try and cut a sample. At least we'll have a metric to see how long we have to wait. I mean, they're definitely drier than they were yesterday at this time by at least 1%. Oh yeah. 14, let's cut them. It's just mind-boggling how this works sometimes. Yesterday we came over thinking these beans would cut at 11 a.m. They didn't even end up testing till maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We started a little bit earlier than that because you can blend some wet ones off. Now they're about where we want them to be at 10 o'clock in the morning. And they're only gonna get drier, so if we waited on that 13.5 or 13% mark, by the time we got to the rest of the field, we'd be losing money. Always start a little bit on the wet side. Good for us though, as long as nothing breaks down, we may be able to move home today. Something else that we're being very vigilant on is that if we're starting to cut beans, other people are either gonna make the decision on their own or catch wind of our combines moving and do the same themselves. That means that the elevator is gonna get slowed down relatively soon, so the more loads we can send, the better off we are because we'll be ahead of that bottleneck. My favorite pastime, burning fossil fuels to save the planet. Very Texan of us. The entirety of the Tier 4 emission system is kind of counterproductive productive in my opinion. Sure, our exhaust is a tiny bit cleaner. However, our engines are much less efficient and we gotta waste fuel doing stuff like this. Like, the balance isn't there. Now, to be fair, this tractor doesn't have the diesel exhaust fluid. I think that does make those machines a little bit more friendly in terms of not regening all the time. However, that's a whole nother level of trouble adding a liquid to your exhaust system. So, I guess there's a good and the bad. What'd they test?
14.6.
Well, that's not bad. According to the boss in the 780, these beans have gotten too tough to cut. They're dragging up, they're not wanting to feed. I really have no explanation for that because they usually get better as the day goes on. Science, I guess. If it's too much for the combines, we'll probably have to stop. They are still a tad bit on the wet side, so it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen. But it looks like he's going out to move his truck to get a head cart. The truck is loaded and we've also saved the world. Good job, team. Once again, the waiting game begins. I am optimistic, though, that these beans will cut earlier, easier, and drier than they did yesterday, just because they started at a better place this morning than they did the previous few days. That being said, let's talk a little bit more about the economics of farming 35 to 40 miles away from home. I discussed it a little bit when we planted this field, because a lot of you said, is it normal to drive that far to farm? The answer is yes and no, and it's purely a matter of scale. Would we drive this far to farm 10 acres? Probably not. However, it's a couple hundred acres. That really divides up our cost of traveling quite a bit. To put it in perspective, we're sending 3 big tractors or machines over, 2 combines and 1 grain cart. That's going to burn quite a bit of fuel alone, not to mention the depreciation of driving an hour and a half on each machine. Put on the trucks, everything, back and forth transportation, we've easily got $1,000 plus gross moving everything over and then another $1,000 moving it back. Essentially, you're lighting $2,000 on fire just to come over here. If you're farming 10 acres, that would be $200 per acre in expenses. If it were 100 acres, let's say, that'd be $20 per acre to move over here. If it were 200 acres, which it is, that'd be $10 per acre. You kind of see where I'm getting here. The larger the tract of land, the easier it is to justify traveling. And a lot of farmers operate this way, and some are willing to travel very long distances for much less ground. Sometimes it's a family thing, a pride thing, or just simply wanting to farm. All of that being said, the largest hurdle presented here is transportation. Moving the combines over puts us in a very tough spot. If this field were way too wet or these beans were not dry enough, we would be in kind of a predicament because we wouldn't want to transport everything back home. One of our biggest worries about farming this far away from home, especially with our harvesting crew, is that if it rains over here, we're basically stranded. Do we send everything back home if we have dry beans at the farm? Or do we stay here for 3, 4, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, a month, just to save that $1,000 back and forth expense? Those are things for you all to weigh on your own operation. You know, for us, this makes sense to move this far. If it was another 2 hours away, we probably wouldn't do it. But we're here, and one of the best things that could happen is that you pick up more ground and spread your transportation expense farther across. If we get another 100 or 200 acres over here, which is wishful thinking, and I'm not trying to take anyone's ground by any means, that would make this much more justifiable. Dad and Katie are working on moving both head carts over from the south field. I'm gonna take the 670 out in the field and dump the rock guard. Allegedly, Katie may have ran some mud through it. We wanna make sure we get it all out of the feeder house. Come on. There we go. I've learned that when you dump the rock guard under the feeder house, it's always pretty wise to have the wind blowing away from the lever. And yes, I did learn that one with a few sneezes and a dirty face. I'm not entirely sure how this has happened, but the beans have picked up moisture. They were in the 14s and now they're in the low 15s, which is some kind of a phenomenon. So, Chris and I are gonna go get lunch. My stomach is full of McDonald's. It's time to get back to work. It's always a gamble eating there for lunch, so hopefully this afternoon is not miserable for me. A lot of combines run across the countryside now over in Shelby County. Although that guy's going to a bend, so he's got a cheat code for today. It is also 1 o'clock, 75 degrees and windy. Although the beans are not drying, it's just not making sense at all. Those beans are working that 780.
I'm really surprised. I mean, it's struggling out there to cut those. Let's just say that our moisture management right now is very creative.
You know these beans are cutting hard when the fuel man has to come fill up the 780. What do you need one of those fancy Thunder Creek trailers for when the co-op will just bring you fuel? Wouldn't hurt to have something though to keep that 780 running. She's a thirsty one. Waiting on trucks. What's new? Jeff shows up just in time to save the day. Right before I was about to fall asleep. This is probably not going to come as a surprise to most of you, but the brand new high-tech John Deere S780 is having sensor problems right now, specifically with the sieve position actuation system, whatever you want to call it. Dad's taking a look at it right now. Not really that important other than your sieves being out of adjustment. Everything went wrong with reliability when the solution became
Electronic.
yeah, turn it off and turn it back on.
That's not right.
Steer's not on. It does like to beep though. Every 5 seconds. Oh, that was 2 seconds. And my dad loves this beeping.
We tried the computerized calibration, didn't make a difference. We're going to open up the back end, lift the chopper up. That way we can actually see if maybe something's sitting on the sieve.
Our analysis really did not net us any kind of useful information. Nothing sitting on the sieves. Dad said they are wide open though, which essentially means they're doing nothing, which is better than doing everything, because if they were closed all the way, we'd be losing grain out the back. You'd rather have too much junk going in the grain tank than not enough. Our sample might be a little bit dirty. As I say though, it weighs it pays. There's a truck here. Let's keep this show rolling. The pessimistic side of me was afraid that a slow elevator and any possible breakdowns could roll us into day 3. You're about 200 foot over there on the S670 away from finishing this field. So we did it. We saved the city. We finished the mission. Now we gotta move home. And the unfortunate part is, we're gonna have to make 2 trips. 1, someone's gonna have to wait on the grain cart, and 2, we have to come get another draper. So the real problem here with that is we don't have enough people to move everything around. Even if we had a hitch for both drapers, for both combines, we still got a pickup here, and we still have a grain cart, because we run light on people. Not that big of a deal, but something we gotta do. The funny thing would be if we put a hitch on the front of the truck and pulled the truck with the combine and pulled the draper with the truck. That'd be some real yeehaw stuff. All right, everyone, here's the game plan. Both combines, once Chris shows up, are gonna dump their tanks. They're gonna fold up and head home. I am going to subsequently top Chris off with the grain cart and hop in the red pickup, take 1 draper home. We're gonna leave the grain cart here. When Jeff gets back, it's actually gonna work out perfectly. He can fill his truck, that will definitely fit on there if my math is right, which is not always right. And then we'll come back later for the grain cart. Once they're both empty, they'll bring both trucks home. Maybe tonight, more likely tomorrow morning. We're waiting on beans to dry back at Mattoon. We come get the other draper and the grain cart. Like I said just a second ago, even if we had hitches on the combines, which I'm all in favor of, we'd still have a truck here, so we're gonna have to make 2 trips. I'm not complaining the slightest bit at all, because we got this field finished up. When you get these beans away from home, hour and a half by combine, finished up, you're thrilled. We may not be moving home tonight if Chris and Jeff never show back up. They've been gone for an exceptional amount of time. I'm sure the elevator and paint is pretty swamped. Big facility, but they can't handle grain very quickly. Although I can't really pick them out by any means, because TG Maniogo is slow. We waited at Coal Station northwest of Mattoon for a long time. Just the nature of harvest season, modern farms, harvesting capacity, and a big crop. We must be parked in pecking order. Dad first, Katie second, and the measly grain cart driver in the back. Headed home soon. Ladder's in, because we're responsible. We just sent Chris with a stuffed full load of beans. Only about 40,000 pounds on the grain cart, which should be no problem for Jeff to load himself. Jeff's qualified to dump that little bit on, it's not even gonna be a full load. I'm getting in the draper, headed east. Safe travels. Wow, I feel like I just got back from vacation. A working vacation, that is. It's not really stress-free. Gotta check real quick and make sure both snouts are still attached to the draper. Not that there was a lot of close calls by any means. Going through a town, dealing with a lot of traffic. Wouldn't be surprised, and these would be the first things to go. Driving heavy machinery down a road that's as busy as Route 16 is definitely a study in driver psychology, and not all of the lessons are good ones. I passed my dad at least 25 miles ago. I was traveling 35 miles an hour. He probably does 25 at best. So that put me at 30 to 40% higher speed, which I believe would give me 10 to 15 minutes to grab a snack and use the bathroom. Way to go. You miscalculated by about 5 minutes. Did your feeder house jump? Or is it normally like that? Everything looks fine in there. Just run it and line it later. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day. When there's beans to cut, we're gonna cut them. What Dad and I were inspecting right there was that the feeder house chains weren't centered right. One of them had jumped the sprocket at least one time, and it's out of whack, but I think we can go ahead and run it. That is an absolutely gorgeous skyline tonight. Whew. And a beautiful John Deere combine to top it off. I've been promoted to combine operator. What a great way to end the day. These are those 3.9 Pioneer Extend soybeans that we had to leave over a week ago because they were too tough. They're testing moisture-wise, however, they are cutting kind of hard. Running 4 miles an hour, and it is lugging the combine down. It is the 20th of October, and we still have green stem beans. Some of these still have leaves on them. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'd like to think that means that our plants were really healthy when they reached the end of their life. It's hard on the combine, and it's sure hard on the wallet when you have to feed that combine fuel. Wow. That is breathtaking. I bet you no one else in the world has this view. That's our sun, not your sun. Where's the grain cart at? Oh yeah, we left it 40 miles away. That's okay, we don't need it tonight. Who wouldn't want to be a combine operator this time of night? Impeccable views. Oh, here comes Chris. He made it back from Pana. You all right back there, combine? Sounds like someone's bowling or something. These things are tough. I have all the power. I'm gonna do it. Oh, nope, that was the windshield wiper. All right, take two. And the windshield wiper's still going. Okay, you get the point. I think that this combine has had a little bit too much to drink because it doesn't even really know what it's harvesting. It says 37% full, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true. Once one of the grain tank paddle switches gets hit, it'll readjust pretty quickly. And now we're at 56 all of a sudden. Where did all those extra bushels come from? We created them. Thin air. It's that easy, folks. Infinite grain. Woo! Cleaning up after the full-time combine operators. It just seems like the grain cart thing to do. I'm running the belt in the slow speed mode right now. Ron from Hartung Family Farms gave me this little trick because he said if you run them full speed, you'll throw beans to that side. That belt can pull them under and plug it up. So, I'm moving it slow. Belt's moving slow. All I gotta do is click this button. Boom. Belt should speed up. Now that's ergonomics. The funniest part about me running the combine is I do exactly what would get under my skin if I was the person operating this full time. I get in here and tweak all the settings, change the belt speed, move some stuff on the screen, maybe speed the rotor up, slow the fan down, just a bunch of weird stuff like that. And I'm sure my dad gets in here and wonders why in the world I mess with everything. Let's just say that I'm a tinkerer. Not always the right move, but I will make a move. Unloading the combine into the semi at night is very difficult. The reflections from these screens do not help, not to mention my poor depth perception at night. Getting to the time of night where I actually have to pay attention in here because it's cutting very hard. Typically run into issues with the cutter bar being able to keep up with the wet soybeans. The stems get kind of tough, doesn't want to chop them, and I start to drag up at the bottom. We've already ran enough mud and dirt through the feeder house. Probably shouldn't add any more. Beans are dry though. I just got the settlement sheets from the elevator over in Pana on that field of soybeans we were cutting. Those were a Beck's 3995 Extendiflex soybean. The field averaged almost 200 acres at 76 and change, which is phenomenal given that there was quite a bit of damage out there from the utility company, a few wet holes that need addressed, and overall the farm needs some TLC, a little bit of fertility work, and definitely some subsurface and surface drainage. The person who bought that farm ground just took it on within this last season. I know they've got big plans to renovate it, so to speak, bring up that fertility, manage the pH, get the drainage where it needs to be, and even over there in Shelby County, they have some high-yielding beans. And I would imagine the neighbors there had some good crops as well. There's a lot of good-looking stuff through that area. The elevator being slow was more than enough sign for me to know that. The manager at that elevator specifically mentioned that yesterday was the most beans that they have ever brought in one day. How funny is that that was the day we chose to start cutting soybeans in a place we've never been before? No. Man, this 780 is going to war right now. I don't know if you guys hear how hard it's working. We're almost done for the night. Just gonna finish the rest of this field. Probably 5 more acres maybe, if that. Looks like we've picked up a passenger on the cutter bar. Don't you know that no one rides for free? Shut the separator off so it doesn't honk at me a million times. Completely unnecessary. It's not even spinning. Makes me want to just unplug the horn. I know safety's important, but looks like we got ourselves a brick or a rock or something. If that's a rock, it is a very, very symmetrical rock. Oh, that combine growl is even more powerful of a lullaby at night. Jeez. If I take a nap now, I'll wake up before I hit the other end of the field there. Just a tiny sliver left, and then we can call it a night. Finished up this field that we should have had done like 2 weeks ago, but it's done now. That's all that matters. You just see that to the west? It is lightning. If we didn't have those beans cut over on the other side of Tower Hill, I'd be having an anxiety attack right now. Look at that. There's lightning. And we fit this all in the truck. Done with this field. Let's put the top down in case it rains. Lights out, buddies. It amazes me how cool combines stay. That big radiator screen and fan. Still gonna let it cool off a little bit though. Lights off. Nope, that was the windshield wiper again. We'll learn one of these days. With some very obvious storms in the distance headed over our direction, I can almost guarantee you that someone somewhere is putting the hammer down and burning some midnight oil to get some more of their crops harvested, if not all of them. Now, I don't want to get any more rains by any means. However, I do take solace in the fact that we have our farthest away field of soybeans done. Everything else is around home, just a couple hundred acres, and then a very large chunk of corn. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes. That's more than enough farming for one video. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!